What's going on, everyone? My name is Andrew, and today I want to tell you guys the 5 most important things you need to do to find the perfect tenant for your rental property. And make sure to stay to the end of the video because that is where we're going to talk about how to make a lease agreement. And that is the most important part, is what ties the whole process together, and that is what ensures you're going to find the perfect tenant. Now, just as a reminder, if you are serious about real estate investing, house flipping, landlording, whatever it might be, we are hosting free in-person monthly networking events right here in Hamilton. So if you want to know more about that, check out our Facebook group, The Property Hustlers, to keep updated with dates and information. First thing I want to talk about is how to prep your apartment. If you haven't painted it, it is a good idea to paint the unit if necessary, and make sure that you do the bare essential stuff such as cleaning. Cleaning is very fundamentally important, and a lot of people don't do it because they're either lazy about it, they don't have time, whatever it might be. But what do you think it says about you as a landlord? If a tenant comes in and views the place, it's empty and it seems messy. It makes you seem negligent, like somebody who doesn't care. And how do you really expect to find a tenant that's going to care for your unit if you don't seem to care for it yourself? Now, let's say you have a tenant in it. What we like to do is we like to communicate abundantly with our tenants to let them know what we're doing. And here's a few good things that you can tell your tenant to make the process a little bit easier. The first thing is that you want to have their cooperation. When you are showing the apartment, you want a degree of flexibility, and you want to make sure that they present the unit in a clean manner. The key thing to explain to your tenants here is that if they are cooperative and they keep their apartment in a clean state during showings, you're more likely to find a good tenant faster, and that will mean less visits to them and less disturbances. So always make sure to make that point clear. The next thing we're going to talk about is advertising, which you have to do this in sequence to prepping your apartment, because when you're advertising, it all starts with the pictures. You know, you can focus on the verbiage all you want, tell everybody how it's close to amenities, bus routes, and all that stuff, but they're just going to Google map it and they'll know everything there is to know about it. But what you will be showcasing is pictures. When you're taking pictures, at least make sure to do the base essential things, such as showcase the kitchen, showcase the bathroom, the living room, and any nice features you have, such as nice appliances. Maybe if you have a nice bathroom, maybe there's a balcony, parking, laundry, whatever you might have, make sure to showcase those things. And when you're taking pictures, you don't need to have the most fancy phone or the most fancy camera. Just take whatever phone you have, put it in wide angle mode, start in the corner, and then just take a picture in landscape mode like this. Don't take pictures like this because it's not going to showcase the width. Now, when you're communicating with people, you're going to be communicating through whatever platform you're using to advertise. So if you're using Facebook, for example, you're going to use the Messenger app and maybe talk to all of them there. You can view their profile, see who you're talking to. That'll give you a feel of the tenant that you might be selecting. And also you can ask them certain questions over that platform, such as what type of job they have, what type of person they have, how many people, do they have pets, whatever it is that you might want to know. You can start that communication there. You can also do this over things like Kijiji, which also has a good chat interface. And then you can also do things off of Zumper, which integrates with Facebook, Kijiji, and various other rental platforms. But I don't like it as much. Although it's easy to cross-integrate, I find that a lot of communications end up being slower because they get lost through email and the system's just a little slower. Now let's talk about the third thing, which is showings. Now, when we're doing showings, you want to first make sure to communicate with your existing tenants a window that you're going to be doing these showings regularly or whatever it is, but make sure to talk to them. The next thing you want to do is be booking with prospective tenants, making sure that they have all the information they need, such as the address, what the rents are, and make sure that they don't come into the unit with the wrong understanding. So communicate with them appropriately and book an appointment. You can use certain tools such as Calendly or Google Calendar. However, I find that it's just generally easier to communicate with them through the platform they already were, and then you can make sure to set things up appropriately. So that's how you go about showing. When you are doing the showing itself, this is where you can start to pick up on certain cues as to who the prospective tenant is. Now, the tenant screening process actually already started right when you started the communication through Facebook or whatever platform you were using, because if you had access to their profile, you can see who they are and maybe a little bit as to what type of person they are that's going to be living in your property. Now, guys, when it comes to tenant screening, there's a lot of things that people should know to ask, and there's also a lot of things you're not supposed to ask. So we're going to leave a link to our tenant application form somewhere in the description below or in a link right here. So check that out and fill out the information if you want to get that. When they show up to the showing, there's some things that I like to take into consideration. Did they show up on time? Did they communicate appropriately beforehand? This one might be a little funny, but I also like to look at their cars that they're driving when they show up, if they have one, right? Because I found that there is a bit of a correlation between how somebody keeps their car in terms of cleanliness and how they keep their apartment. But now the formal screening application process has to do with what they tell you and what they're willing to put on paper. And you can actually verify a lot of this stuff beforehand by just having a conversation. If you have a good feeling about this prospective tenant, you can have a conversation with them and just ask them the questions that you would be asking in an application, and you can can just let them tell you whatever it is they would want to say, and you can assume that they are true. If I have a good feeling about a tenant, sometimes what I will do is I will tentatively approve them and just tell them that you are tentatively approved so long as I can verify all the information that you gave me on your application. If all that stuff checks out, then we're good. And people tend to be pretty confident in themselves if they know that what they put is true and you're gonna verify no problem, so why not speed up that process? Another thing I like to do is ask the tenant if there's anything that they wish to add, such as, is there any issues with their credit we should know about? Is there any issues with employment? At least it gives the tenant a chance to explain themselves in the first place rather than having to explain themselves later. Now, when you're doing references, there are a few things you want to keep in mind, such as that landlord references are generally not as reliable. And the reason for that is because let's say this tenant may be a bad tenant and the landlord wants that tenant to leave. Of course, that landlord is going to give this guy a good reference, so you can't necessarily rely on it completely. You're still going to check, but just know that it might not be the most reliable. When you're checking work references, if they're working for a corporation, it's not a bad idea to call the main work line and see if you can be passed to HR and check their references from there. Now, when you're vetting your tenant, you want to consider the tenant profile appropriately. The best tenant for your property is not necessarily the best possible person, it is the best person for your property. And what I mean by that is we're talking about socioeconomic scales here. So if you have a B class or a C class property, and you can measure those how you will, but let's just say that you have a property that is not top tier. You don't want to necessarily find somebody making 3 figures, driving a Rolls Royce or something like that and moving into this property. You have to set the expectation appropriately, because if they move into that property, how long do you think it's going to be before they move out? And vice versa. If you have like a nice property, you don't want to move somebody in there who just doesn't fit. They either won't be able to afford it long term, or they won't be able to fit in or get along with the neighbors, whatever it might be. These are just things you need to consider holistically. You don't judge any one thing individually, you look at them all together. Now, when it comes to vetting your tenant, there are so many things that you should consider, and you need to know how to piece them all together. I won't be able to explain all this in this short YouTube video, but if you want to know more about it, make sure to check our website, propertyhustlers.ca, where we're going to be posting information about our property management courses, where we teach landlords how to manage properties, how to do maintenance, how to landlord, how to find tenants, whatever it might be. We can teach you how to do it. If you want to know more about that, check that out. Now, the fifth thing I want to talk to you guys about is how to go about structuring your lease agreement. And this is the most important part, because this is going to tie everything together and set you up for a good landlording experience. If you're in Ontario, you're going to be using the standard Ontario lease agreement, and it has some rules that you need to follow. You're going to fill all those things out accordingly, but you are also going to create your own building policy that you're going to add through the additional terms section of your standard Ontario lease agreement. Now, this is important because that's where you're going to place all your house rules: how to engage with you, how to talk to you, how to go about putting in maintenance requests, how to pay the rent, whatever it is, that's where you're going to be putting it. And you want to make sure to put everything that you can possibly think of that you feel is necessary to put in there. Make sure to include some fundamental things, such as your email address, how to communicate, what hours they can expect maintenance to be done in so they don't have an unrealistic expectation, what constitutes an emergency so they're not contacting you for nonsense that is not emergencies. You won't even want to put things in there like how many people are staying in the property, their names, or contact information, maybe an occupancy limit, what constitutes too much noise, and basically whatever house rules there are. If you want to do regular inspections, you can put that in your lease agreement and say that every 3 months I'm coming to check smoke detectors, fire extinguishers, whatever it might be, you're going to put these things in. This might seem like you're overstructuring a little bit, but this is how you set the right tone for the relationship between you and your tenant from the start. And if they see a very professional lease agreement, they will expect professional conduct on both ends. So there you have it, guys. Those are the 5 most important things that I think you need to do to find the perfect tenant for your property. So if you found this video to be helpful, make sure to like, subscribe, and I will see you on the next one.